German, you'll know maybe what it is. Sehnsucht, does that make sense? It's a word, that is, describes a deep longing for what we don't have, but we know it's out there somewhere. You had that feeling before? You know it's out there somewhere. Where's it at? This deep longing. In fact, not just some great writers and poets and thinkers have said that. St. Paul himself said that all of creation is waiting with eager longing. Now, I want to use some of Paul's thoughts from Romans chapter 8 to really sum up and bring together the readings that we had just a few moments ago. And I think it starts with that all of creation is longing, eagerly waiting with longing. It seems like it can happen in any moment. Time of sickness, deep disappointment. We sense that there's something better in the time beyond that we're in right now, that there would be more hope, somehow that things would be better. It's not surprising to find out that another one of Paul's observations is this, that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed in us. You know, it can happen sometimes for us that we have a moment of ecstasy. Everything is just going the way we would like it to go. A beautiful concert maybe is one of those moments. Maybe it's a feeling of love that you have when somebody comes into your presence, somebody, you know, a new granddaughter or a new grandson, or just anybody that brings in that spark. And we have a feeling that seems to overwhelm us. And what do we say? It don't get better than this, right? You ever said that? It don't get better than this. And then it seems as though when that moment's passed, we quickly wonder when the next great moment like that's going to come, and we expect that it's even going to be better than the one that we just said it can't get any better than that, right? And we hope for it. We want it. It's as if we have here and now, and it's only a shadow of the things to come. And as Paul said, earth is begging for heaven, and we live in the middle of the in-between. There's conflict, there's strife. There's things that happen in our world that seem to overwhelm us. And here is where Christian hope can be found. And Paul mentions hope repeatedly in the verses from Romans chapter 8. Something that anticipates the future. Something better, something more. We wait. We imagine. We believe. And during that time we grow in character. And really, these are the components of Christian hope, as I just said. Waiting, hoping, imagining, believing or faith, and character. That's the process. That's what we're going through. That's Advent, you might say. When we hope, we do not have what we have been promised or expect. We know that God has made us promises, and we also know that God's a faithful God and that He'll fulfill His promises for us. But in the meantime, we must wait, not as in a waiting room. If you went, I had to go get a blood test yesterday. I had to wait a few minutes, and you know they have all the magazines and stuff. You can sit there and look through those if you want. Sometimes there's interesting people. I had a conversation with another guy that was waiting, and honestly, I walked in and I looked at this guy. Now, I'm an Ohio State Buckeyes fan. They had a bad week Saturday. And there was this guy sitting there that looked just like the head coach, Ryan Day. I looked at him and I said, you look like somebody. He said, who? I said, Ryan Day. He says, I'm not Ryan Day. He says, who's Ryan Day? Well, I told him about it. But yeah, so that's how it is in the waiting room. But that's not at all what Paul was talking about, like waiting in a waiting room in the doctor's office with magazines and people to talk to. That's not at all what he was talking about. He was talking about enduring a war that we're still engaged in. Paul likens it to a woman waiting in labor. This is what we might call active waiting. It was like ancient Israel waiting for the Messiah, and with all the prophecies to be fulfilled, all the sacrifices that they would make along the way. Hope means time is passing, and that we have to wait. But what are we waiting for as New Testament Christians? Paul has something to say about that. He says, we're waiting for the freedom of the glory of the children of God. And then he writes, for adoption and the redemption of our bodies. So we're looking for the freedom of the glory of God, and also that our bodies would be redeemed. He says all of this and more as he describes the return of Jesus Christ. And that's what we're doing this Advent season, talking about the coming. All of that and more are ours when he does return. And whatever we might know about freedom, what little bit that we know about freedom and glory or having our bodies feel good, are nothing compared to what is to come. There's more ahead of us in Jesus Christ, and it's better. But all we can do is wait. Well, when we hope, we cannot see, as Paul writes in verse 24. Now hope is what is not seen, for who hopes for what he sees? There's a painting. Maybe you've seen it. I when I went to college, walked into my student advisor's office, and he said to me, "What are you going to major in?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go to the seminary, so I guess theology." And he goes, "Oh no." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" "No, oh no." He says, "You're going to get enough of that in the seminary." He said, "What do you like?" I said, "I like art." He said, "Well, there you go." So I majored in art and humanities. And so, I got to look at a lot of art and listen to a lot of music and that kind of thing. And there was a painting by George Frederick Watts. It's called Hope, and it was from 1886. And it's a picture depicted as a blindfolded woman in tattered clothes, clinging to one last broken string on a harp. You picture that? A lady with tattered clothes, one string on a harp, and she cannot see because she's blind, but she keeps playing and listening. Jesus says to his disciples, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." We can't see Christ right now with our eyes. We can see signs of his presence. We can see evidence of his love and joy. And we know that there's more to come when we will see him. In fact, Revelation tells us that every eye will see him, not just ours, not just believers, but every eye will see him. But for now, we may not see him. We can only imagine. Our hope is nourished by our imagination. Again, this is a part of that process of being New Testament Christians, using our imagination, so that the prophet Isaiah, in presenting hope, presents this picture after picture, image after image. We can look at the prophets, we can look at the words of the apostles, we can hear the words of Jesus, and we can imagine what God has in store for us, what lies ahead for God's people. We can see it in the Old Testament, and it's the same in the New Testament. Consider the book of Revelation a treasure impossible to read without our imagination. If you aren't using your imagination while you're reading the book of Revelation, it doesn't make any sense. This lack of sight where hope is concerned comes because hope is so tightly connected to faith. So that's the next part, faith. As believers, we got to believe, right? It's part of it. Faith, the third component of Christian hope. We wait, we imagine, we trust. Writer of the Hebrews describes it this way, chapter 11. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So it looks like, according to the writer of Hebrews, faith and hope are kind of interlocked with each other. They're partners. You can't have one without the other. Remember that song or commercial from way a long time ago? The gun commercial? Faith gives hope its covenant and its content and its substance. And we know, because of all that the Old and the New Testament has revealed, that this is all fulfilled in Jesus Christ. And we talk about his coming, not just the one that's coming up, but when he came in history. And we talk about it, and we remember God's promises, and that we know even as we go through this life that God has promised even better. I had a conversation with Mike earlier this week. We were talking about Advent, and I don't have a blue stole, so I have a purple one, and so the purple was out here, so I didn't have to go without one. And the question Mike asked was, well, has the symbols for Advent changed? And I said, well, in the early 80s, late 70s, when the new hymnal came out, yeah, there was a change of symbol. And I said there was a new symbol that they produced and became very popular in the church at that time. And it was this symbol. The first thing that is obvious because it's right in the front is a cradle, and kind of like a cradle, something like that. Just the bottom part, not the star, not the angel, but a cradle. And then behind that, and bigger than that, was a chalice and a wafer, a host. And that was kind of set behind it. And then above it all was trumpets, kind of like those. And what it meant was Christ comes in history, the chalice and the host, mystery, and he will come in majesty. Well, that's what we're looking for, right? We want to see Jesus. We would add one last contributor to hope and character, and in Romans chapter 5, Paul writes, verses 3 and 4, we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. That's our journey. Suffering over time calls for perseverance and stamina. Sometimes we've just had to gut it, right? There's no easy way. You just, bring all the willpower you have, all the determination, and you move through it. In the process, our character is strengthened, and one of the virtues produced on the field of hardship finally is hope. And I hope you're hopeful people. I hope that you're a hopeful people. I've tried to say that a couple of times. We learn in the crucible that God can be trusted. So that's what happens. We are moving through a period of time, imagination, faith, and even hardship. And when all these come together, we finally end up with a strong, secure conviction and hope. And this is how hope works. And this is another letter of Paul's to Colossians chapter 1. And Paul is describing hope in Colossians, and he says, Christ in you, the hope of glory. That's what it's about, is that Christ himself comes and he dwells in us, with us, and you know what that means, and he says it in other places very clearly for us. That means wherever we go, he says, I will be with you. We don't have to worry. Jesus Christ is our hope. His sacrifice on the cross, his love, his power, his wisdom, his victory over death, his promises, his constant presence. Christ in us gives us hope. And I thank and praise God that he has done that for me. I know he's done it for you. In my short time getting to know you, I've heard your testimony. And I've seen it not just in word, heard it not just in words, but I've seen it in action. Christ in us gives hope. And this is hope, unlike so many other gifts. This hope, will never disappoint.